Happy fall, everyone. I'm Michelle Bruckner, and welcome to the Showgirl Tip of the Day podcast. The interview to which you're about to listen was recorded a while ago. Jimmy, the stage door medium. It's October, so everyone thinks, oh, spooky season, etc., etc. But October, the end of October, is supposedly when the veil between this life and this physical world and the spiritual world is the thinnest. So I think it's interesting to reflect on what happens to people after they pass away. I just had this fascinating conversation with my mom. I'm at my parents' house right now visiting. I'm going to put that up in next week's episode. She apparently had some paranormal things happen in this house, which I don't doubt it because this is a house that is multi-generational. My dad's parents owned it before my dad did, so we'll see. I'm also going to ask other people, have they had any experiences, any visitations, any dreams, crazy things. So I'm also going to talk with my good friend Billy, who just had a very spiritual experience in Italy. He went over to Italy and he went to so many churches and had some communication with this young person who just might be made a saint. So we'll talk about that next week. But this is Jimmy the Stage Door Medium. I hope you enjoy this episode. He's a lovely person, full of light. As the days get shorter, it's starting to get colder. The nights are getting earlier. I just want to say I hope you all find a wonderful candle you can put on a table. I hope you all have food to eat and you can become cozy and warm. And happy fall, everyone. Happy fall. It's going to be a great holiday season. I'm already gearing up. You know me in the holidays. I love the holidays. So I'm here with Jimmy, the Stage Door Medium. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. We have a mutual friend, Nikki Vendetti, who is currently the swing on Broadway and on the tour of Wicked, which she has been for many years.
How did you meet Nikki?
We met at Maine State Music Theater. We performed together and we lived in the same cast house. We just clicked and he's such a wonderful dancer. He really was. We were both having such a great summer, and just to watch him work, he's a beautiful artist. Mm-hmm. And I got so inspired by him, by just his dedication to dancing and how gorgeous he is, how much he loves to move and dance.
And I feel like he only matches that with like his kindness. I feel like he is one of the kindest. I met him 2 summers ago when he moved to Buffalo. He grew up here in spots and then Chicago, and then he moved back home, and then Wicked needed him to come restart Broadway. So he was like, I gotta go. I'm like, you gotta go. You gotta go reopen Broadway. That's so cool. So no, he's a good person. I miss him.
Well, hopefully we can all get together soon.
Yes.
So one thing about what you do, I'm fascinated by it. Did you start hearing things when you were younger? How did you get to know your gift?
Sure. It's interesting. And it's so funny. Like, I feel like I don't personally call it a gift. And it's not that I don't think I don't think it's a curse either. I think it's an ability that we all have. It's just a matter of, I always equate it to the likes of like playing the piano. I think everyone has the ability to play the piano. Whether or not they want to practice and take the time to really learn, is up to them. And, not everyone might go on to be a a concert pianist. Doesn't mean that you can't appreciate it. And I say the same thing for mediumship. So it's hard to say. I wish I had those stories where like people tell you that they were, hearing things at the age of 2 and seeing people at their bedside. And I didn't. Mine is kind of lackluster. But I also think it's probably more realistic than what you see on TV shows or movies. I'm very dubious as to if anyone has that experience. I just heard somebody and they're like, as a medium, we can never turn it off. And I'm like, that's not true. Like it's so not true. So for me, I seem to know when things were going to happen as I would say around 9 or 10. I would like know details and bits and pieces of like I would know how somebody had passed in the family that I had never met, or just weird, not weird, but like, things like that would make you pause and go, and then you just, as a kid, you're like, oh, it's just coincidence. And you go on doing whatever you're doing. And it wasn't until I was in high school, I had suffered from like debilitating anxiety. And it was more or less felt like obsessive compulsive disorder, where I would start getting like a million questions up in my head and feelings on my body. And I'm like, why do I feel like, now I know what it means. And now I know how to control it, but it really spooked me. And I remember going to the doctor for it. It wasn't until I had seen a medium in college, and the medium was like, I sat down with her and she's like, you suffer from like debilitating anxiety. And I'm like, what a way to like start a reading. I'm like, yes, I do though. And she was like, it's because you're supposed to be doing this as a medium. And I'm like, I thought it was kind of like the exit through the gift shop type of pitch where I'm like, oh, but for like $4,000, we can train you. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And another medium told me the exact same thing, like anxiety, you're supposed to be doing this, and that's why you're feeling anxious. So I trained about 10 years ago officially, and have been practicing ever since. But that's my story of how I came to, I guess, be a medium. But it wasn't as big and Hollywood-esque as they want you to think it is.
What is your favorite thing about this?
Just helping people. And I know that it's the best. It is the only reason we do it, and it's the most beautiful. Like there's times as the medium, like right, before you hop on a call, you're like, I think I'm going crazy with what I'm being shown, and I'm just going to take that leap of faith and say what I'm getting, and to see that client's face change and them go like, that's exactly who I was praying would come through today, or like, I needed to hear this today. To find it's a real honor to be able to do that. And it's also, I think, expanded like I think the best way I can word it is like the way I see the world now as a practicing medium is so different than before I was practicing. Like, I think I would like to think I have a better sense of the big picture now. And if something doesn't go my way, I can go, okay, like, what is this? Rather than going, why is this happening to me? Now, the big thing I ask myself is, what is this trying to teach me right now? And it's just been a really beautiful reorient or reshift of the brain, so to speak, and the way I see things. And so I know that wasn't one, that was two, but those would be my two for sure.
That's great. Is there something that you really get annoyed with about it? Is there something that you wish you're like, well, it comes with the territory, but I wish?
That's good. I feel like no one's ever asked me that before. Like, it's such a good question. And yeah, there's a few. I feel like I don't want to say it's annoying. There is one that annoys me that I guess I'll share. But I think the one thing that people don't understand is like how much this work takes out of you. I can probably do 3 to 4. I choose to do 2 each time I do each day that I read, because I found that like the more I've developed as a medium, I do think that I'm able to give some more nuanced pieces of information, but that drains you. It comes at a cost. And I think that would be the first thing. Like, people really don't understand that you kind of have to live like a nun the night before and the day of. Like, if I have a reading at 10 a.m., like, I'm in bed by like 10. I am up usually about 2.5 to 3 hours before the reading to start meditating, doing my prep work, drinking a lot of water. It could be something so simple as like eating some bananas. It's a weird thing. Bananas help to like get energy back into the body. That would be I don't want to call it. I mean, you can't. It's not like I can have a glass of wine, or you really have to keep that body clean. I feel like you get it as a dancer. It's the exact same way. You really have to live, in a different way as an artist. I think the thing that would annoy me is I don't mind skepticism at all. I think it's healthy. I encourage it. And I always tell clients, like, you shouldn't come in volunteering information. You shouldn't come in, going, I'd like to speak with my mom today, or my brother. Like, please let me do that. Like, let me do let me work with your loved ones, rather than you telling me, because I don't want somebody to leave there going, it didn't seem that good because I told them that going in. But I will say, I think sometimes when you have some of the skeptics, I always say you can be skeptical, just don't be rude. And I think that would be my biggest pet peeve. Is there's times, and it's not often, I'm like pretty fortunate that the folks that come to see me for readings are like really sweet and kind, and But every so often you'll get somebody that will come in like this, and it's like they're like, impress me. And they're like, what number am I thinking? Or what color socks was I wearing when my dad died? I'm like, that's like mentally, like that's not what we do as mediums. So I think, or they'll tell you at the end, they're like, well, you got like 8 out of 10 things right. And you're like, oh, okay. And you're like, and to me, I'm like, that's great. I feel like you'll have folks that, I think it's human. We want to quantify a very qualitative experience. And it took me a while. I grappled with that for years of going like, oh my gosh, I got like 98% of things right during this reading. And that 2%, I would go home like beating myself up over it. And I'm like, because you don't see that on television. You don't see the edit effect. Do you know what I mean? You don't see Teresa Caputo getting something wrong or Tyler Henry getting something wrong. We all do. It's not a performance. And I think now the older I get and the more I develop as a medium, it's more exciting to go, okay, I struggled with this moment there, but I figured it out. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all growing. And I think the more and more I lean into that, it's a great reminder of why we do what we do. But yeah, those would be my two. I'm sorry, I'm like going on and on.
No, I love this. This fascinates me because I've always wanted to know just how different people work. I told you when we had our reading, I told you my nail salon story, how I had been going to the same nail salon for years and always had the same person do my nails. And one day I was sitting there and I kept hearing the word birthday over and over. And I saw the icon for a birthday cake, like, when you text somebody the birthday cake. And in my head, while I was getting my nails done, birthday, 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 like 10,000 times. So finally I looked up and I said, is it somebody's birthday? And the owners of the salon were hovering over us, like cleaning and picking things up. And they exchanged a look. And the young woman who used to do my nails said very quietly, it was my birthday yesterday. And I felt like, oh, something just happened there because it wouldn't stop until I said something.
And when you said it, like I was talking earlier about the look, like it's the, oh my goodness, it's like, I call it, it's like a shift. When something is acknowledged that somebody, was not expecting. And was there more? Like after you mentioned birthday, did you get anything else, or did they mention who they
I personally felt like it was this person's grandmother telling me to say something. Yeah. But I didn't say that because I didn't want to cause a stir in the nail salon. And
sure,
it's a place, actually, the place has since closed the last couple of years, unfortunately. But it was always a kind of place that wasn't loud. It was a very quiet place. So I kind of felt as if I had said, I think your grandmother's talking to me. I think that would not have gone over well. So I just kind of left it at the birthday question.
That's like the number one thing that I was taught when I trained is that if you have a message for somebody, like you always like, ask for their permission. If you're like, hey, like yours is different because obviously you weren't like, I think I have your grandmother. It was just a very, innocuous question. But I know that was one thing that I was taught, because when you see it on TV shows, they're going into like delis and they're stopping like deli workers and they're like, did you lose the mother? And like people are crying. And I'm like, this is a very invasive thing to be doing to someone in a very public forum. So when I trained, they always said, the best way to do it is, hey, I'm not sure what your comfort level is with mediumship or messages from loved ones. I do have a message. It's only positive. Do I have your permission to share it with you? But I mean, even now, like even at the salon I go to, it's I just, sometimes I'll pull my stylist aside after and I'll ask her something, but I never want to do it publicly. And it's different than somebody coming for a reading where you're one-on-one. I mean, you don't know what can of worms you could be opening up by delivering a message. And so, no, I'm right there with you.
And someone who's in the middle of a work day, when I'm at work, I'm in a different energy zone than when I'm at home. And when I got ready to do the reading with you, I put myself into a particular headspace and was ready to receive all that information. So I try to respect people's boundaries in terms of they're at work. They're not going to open their soul up.
Yeah,
right,
I know.
right away.
I mean, full time I teach. And so it's interesting. Like there are days where like office, coworkers will come down and they'll say something to me. And, recently this was going off and on the left side of my head. And, which for me means like tragic passing, which means somebody that would have passed from impact to the head or self-harm or something like that. And, she does know about me and my coworker, and she's very receptive to it. And she's like, can I ask, are you okay? And I'm like, good, like totally good. And then later on, I pulled her aside. I'm like, I'm not sure if you're comfortable with this, but like, do you connect with this female that passed from head trauma? And she said that one of her best friends had passed away a couple weeks before, and it slipped on ice and hit the head and put her in the hospital.
My goodness.
So, but you said it best. You kind of go into a work mode. Like this is a work mode for like doing a reading is a very different work mode than my teaching mode. But I will say I'm grateful for teaching because I feel like I go into readings with a greater sensitivity because of my job from 8 to 3, so to speak. Like especially in 2022, you have to be so careful with the way you word things to students and being sensitive to their issues. And I remember back in the day, if somebody had was like, hey, I have to turn in a paper late, the teacher was like, no, you're not, like you're failing this, or I don't care what your excuse is. And now, I think there's more of a greater sensitivity to students' home lives and what could be going on there. And it's just, I'm grateful I'm able to take that with me into my work as a medium after school and go, you don't know what this person is coming in with, what type of pain or emotional issues that they're dealing with from their loss. So to tread lightly and be sensitive. And
I have a big question for you. It's a two-parter. So the first part is a lot of souls departed in the pandemic, all kind of at once, right? So my question is, I wonder where everyone is. Are they just hovering somewhere like, okay, what do we do now? Or did they immediately go like quote unquote to heaven? And my other question is, with what's going on in Ukraine and other places in the world, how can we set our energy and send the good part of our energy field over to people in need?
I'm going to take my time with this. That's beautiful. The first one, I think the first part of the question about, what happened during the pandemic and where are they? They've crossed over. I'm very much somebody as a medium that I do not believe in stuck souls or earthbound spirits that wander around. I think that's something that they want you to believe on ghost hunting TV shows because it sells. It's what we see in movies. It's what we see and again, it's never like that. So while they've crossed over, I also am a firm believer though that when we cross in a traumatic fashion or in a way where we don't have a lot of time to prepare, we will find hobbies on the other side to help us transition. Like I had read somebody a couple days ago and it broke my heart. She had booked a reading. She had booked a reading like a while out. And then I had met with her and I was like, I feel like I can't catch my breath right now. I'm like, whenever I feel this way, it means like somebody has just passed. And so my brain is, I think logically going to, I wonder if this person passed and then they booked the reading. Oh no, they had booked the reading and then their mom had passed away 3 days before I saw her. And the mom started talking about, she's like, please let her know I'm okay. And she started gardening and she's like, please tell her this is one of the ways that I am going to acclimate to the other side is through a hobby. And I'm like, how do you understand the gardening? I'm like, because I don't think she did this when she was here until late. And she was like, that's absolutely correct. She's like, my mom didn't know how to garden until like the later years of her life. And then she was really into it and she helped me with mine. So they'll find hobbies. Children that pass traumatically will usually help other children cross over. Sometimes we help animals cross over. So in terms of the COVID passings, that would be, the best answer I can give. They've all crossed, but, based on the nature of it, they might be doing some extra TLC type of things to acclimate. And then for the Ukraine, oh gosh, it's funny, years ago, I know I got to be careful with how I word it, but sometimes I get annoyed I used to get annoyed when I would just see those comments of like, prayers for this country or prayers for this country. And I'm also like, okay, but what about advocacy or what can we do? Like recently I was reading that there's a zoo in the Ukraine and like I started crying reading this article. Like the zoo workers are coming in every day to take care of the animals because the animals are so traumatized from, explosion blasts and noise that are going on and these workers are like heroic. They're going in to take care of them. And I had read that you could purchase just admission to the zoo as a way of like helping to ensure that the workers have wages that they can live off of and that the animals continue to get help. But so from there, it wasn't until like recently when I was like, oh gosh, like I think I understand now when people are like prayers for Ukraine or prayers for this country, like when we don't know what else to do, we can just send a light up. And because I do believe in the power of prayer fully. And so for me, when I meditate, that's my time where I can send prayer and send light out to, I think, who needs it. Sometimes it might be for a specific friend or family member of mine. And I like visualize myself across from them. And then I visualize a little ball of light that starts in like my tummy heart area. And it just grows and it grows outside of my body. And then I get it to go over to where they are. It continues to grow. And I also meditate in how it feels too. So I try to feel warmth and then I go, I'm going to send this to you because I think you might need it today. And so we can do the same. We can look at a photo of something happening in the Ukraine. We can just look at the flag, as long as we have something to stand for what we're trying to do. I think that serves its purpose. And that's such a great question.
Thank you. When I'm around my niece and nephew, they're very young. That feeling that you describe of the light in your heart area, I feel that automatically. And I read somewhere that when you are feeling that kind of love, your body, your photons or whatever, I'm not a scientist, just the showgirl.
Me neither.
But you actually emit light. The energy it's real. You can change your physical, the energy that you produce, you can change that. Just the feeling of love is so much more filled with light than any other kind of feeling.
I tingle when I meditate. And it's when I first started, there's so many different types of meditation you can do. But when I wanted to develop more as a medium, I kept hearing about I was trying to do the meditations where you can hear water, or there's like the British man. He's like, visualize the white light. And I'm like, this isn't working for me. I'm like, I started like picking the meditation apart. And it wasn't until somebody told me, they're like, I think you're doing it wrong. You really should be meditating with something called like sitting in the power, which is just a meditation with no music. Until you can hear a guided one, someone will walk you through how to do it, but there's no music. It's just basically silence, and you're growing that light. And then you merge that light with what we call source energy or God energy, and you kind of merge it. And then we kind of go, I'm open to whatever beautiful messages you want to share with me. And when I was doing it, it took me a while, but when I started doing it correctly, I was like, I feel all tingly and I feel like I'm walking through like cobwebs. And it wasn't until probably about a year ago, I had watched this video with a practicing medium in the UK. And he talked about how one of the most common signs of like sitting in the power correctly is the feeling that like we're going through cobwebs. And I'm like, that's wild. I'm like, that's exactly how it feels on my body. So it's neat to, if it's not just me, to have other people talk about that's what it feels like. I wouldn't doubt you that it feels that way when we're around, the presence of loved ones and we can feel that energy.
How would you tell someone or advise someone if they want to develop their own source energy or their relationship with source energy? Because I think as a performing artist, that I feel that connection. There are certain times on stage when you're in the zone and you have this energy that, yes, you physically train, and yes, you work on your voice and your physicality and all that, but then something else happens. And I think you get connected to that everlasting source.
Gosh, you said it best. Yeah. I always say with mediumship, the way it works is like, I believe like my little piece of God energy is tapping into your little piece of God energy and your grandmother's piece of God energy that's on the other side. Like we're all on the same radio channel, where sometimes, when you described a Broadway show or performance, there's times where I'm like, these folks are not on the same radio channel today. Like Alphaba's on channel 1 and so is on 8. And you can feel that. And I think there's a real magic and power when you're like, oh my gosh, they're all functioning as one. So I think with mediumship, and it's also interesting because I feel like with the pandemic, so many people have started wanting to learn more about their spirituality and how to deepen it, because like we were housebound for a while. We couldn't go out. We had these big questions. We were losing loved ones. And I think the question came like, what do I do with my time? These anxious thoughts I have, and how do I think tap into something bigger to bring myself peace. And so for me, I would say number one, stay off of YouTube. I feel like while it's very tempting and there's some credible things out there, a lot of them are not credible. You also don't know the ethics of the person that is, teaching it or running it on YouTube. And so I always say, like, first and foremost, like look into, are there any online courses? When I had trained, I had trained at a really cool, actually, it's a spiritualist community called Lilydale, which is near Fredonia College, like Cassadaga Lake. And it's crazy. It's like a Disney World of like psychic mediums, and it's open from spring until October. And you basically park, and then there's 4 little streets, and then whatever medium has availability, you can go sit on the porch and they'll do a reading for you. But I trained there, and I think I know it's a long story, but the reason I say that is like, you really need to be in front of a person, in front of somebody that can help guide you and instruct you. And I think the most important thing that they're going to teach you is like the ethics of mediumship, the reminder that you're in control the entire time as the medium. Like, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but like spirit is not like we're signing up to do this work. And while yes, they're meeting us and they're giving up their energy so beautifully. Like I always say, like if you meet if there's something that makes you uncomfortable during a reading, or if there's like a grumpy soul, like you can go, okay, I'm done. And I think that was the best thing I could have learned from the get-go is you're in charge as the medium. You have to set your intentions. And I think the other thing is just like the P's and Q's, like the etiquettes, how to talk to people, how to bring up something that might be a little hairy and maybe sad without doing it in a way you really walk like a tightrope. I call it like the tightrope actor in a reading, because you're not only, trying to represent yourself well as the medium, but you're also working with like the client in front of you and being very careful so that way you don't offend them or say something to invalidate the experience for them. But you also have the energy of your loved ones that are there. And you're like, I want to I want to relay your messages as close as I can to what you're saying. I don't want to just loosely paraphrase you. And so it's this narrow tightrope. So I would say start with, looking online. Is there a training that you can do in person? Or if not, can you do a Zoom one? And I'm so sorry, it's a long answer, but ask how many people are enrolled in the course or are admitted. If they are telling you over 10 or 15, don't sign up for it. I mean, you really need some one-on-one TLC during these trainings so that way you can know what you're doing, is correct. And I would say the other thing is, start to look into crystals, start to look into some tools. Like I have a couple next to me right now. Like I have one for clarity, just as a means of, so that I don't ramble during my readings or during podcast interviews. I have one for self-love. So look into crystals, and then from there, find a beautiful support circle, or at least even if it's just 1 or 2 people that are also like-minded and want to practice reading, where you don't know too much about their family history. So you can say, hey, do you mind if I practice reading on you and you can practice reading on me? It's all about intention. And if we're trying to do something for the right reasons and putting good out there and developing our ability, I always say, like, you can't go wrong if the intention is good.
I really enjoyed the meditation that you did at the start of our reading, where you said, I'm only calling for the highest of energies and the best intended ones, and only spirits that want to come through for the highest good. I really enjoyed that it's not a disclaimer, but it's like, hey, everything that's out there, we want the positive, we want the good, the white light to come.
Yeah, it's so important to me that we do that. I see a lot of mediums sometimes that don't start with a prayer. And do you have to? No. Should you? In my opinion, yes. Like you should be putting, gratitude out there first and foremost. Like I think for me, the other reason I do the prayer is like, even if even if the client's not a person of prayer, I'm just taking a moment to express gratitude for what I'm about to do. And so that it never becomes pedestrian to me. Like I never want this to feel like a chore to channel someone's loved ones or a chore to help someone. So for me, it's just a little reminder where it's like a pinch me moment of like, oh my gosh, like we get to do this together for the next 45 minutes. And I always say, like, we get what we put out there. And I tell people before they come into the reading, pray to your loved ones. Who do you want to come through? What do you want them to talk about? And by doing the same thing with the prayer, I think personally that we kind of like supercharge that magnet, so to speak, for what we're looking for.
That's great. How do people find you for a reading? Do they find you on your website or word of mouth? Like I met you through Nikki. I just was so intrigued. So are you so busy with people, or are you always open to someone asking you to possibly do a reading?
Sure. I think that now it's a bit of a mix. I would say it's sometimes website or social media. Other times it's funny. Like my dad growing up, my dad is an artist, and my dad always told me, he's like, never underestimate the power of word of mouth. And he was like, I remember he said something like, you can have the best website, the best X, Y, and Z, but if no one as a person can vouch for you and the type of person you are and the work you do, like it's not going to go anywhere. So for mediumship, it's really word of mouth. I feel like no matter who, until you start getting into the big leagues, then it's, then it's obviously, then it's like Tyler Henry. You're like, oh, I saw him on Netflix. But I would say for the Broadway community, though, I'm just, I guess to piggyback off of the stage door part. Then again, that's word of mouth too. Though it was fascinating because when I started the podcast, let's say I read for like Broadway person, I don't know, Broadway person A, they hopefully have a great experience and they tell their loved ones and their family and friends, but their family and friends live in like Wisconsin or something like this. So it was wild in the best way possible to kind of see like, oh my goodness, like your name has kind of gone from just Buffalo and Western New York to like around the country or like other parts of the world. Like because I had read somebody who was born and raised in Australia, like there were readings that were done in Australia. And like it was, it's been wild in the most beautiful way to kind of see how it's branched out. But end of the day, word of mouth, I say, is always going to be the most effective a way of.
What's special about reading people from the Broadway community?
Oh, goodness. I think personally, actors have this beautiful ability. It's funny. It's a rarity that I know we talked about skepticism, and it's a rarity that I see a Broadway actor or an actor in general that comes in skeptical or like that impress me. I think they get it. I think they know what it feels like to go into a room and be vulnerable and to open their heart to an experience. And as part of their job nightly, it's okay, I know this might not make sense, but I'm going to suspend my disbelief and go on this journey for the next couple hours. And I feel like the actors come in with such like open hearts during our readings that I always say some of the most beautiful messages have come through for actors because they just come in already ready of like, I'm ready to receive like all the good things that are coming for me. And I'd be so honored if you'd share it. And I think that would be, gosh, I think that's got to be the number one joy of getting to work with them.
Well, that's awesome. I know everyone just loves hearing the messages that you facilitate and bring. And the last, I would say 2 years, there's been a lot of readings that you've done with all the Broadway community. And you do have a podcast, right? What is the title of your podcast, just so people could listen in?
Sure. It's called Stage Door Medium.
Stage Door Medium. I love that title, and I can't wait to catch up on the episodes too. How do you juggle it all? How do you juggle working and having a regular social life and family time?
I think that's it. I think family time. My husband and I, we have these two incredible puppies that, by puppies, I mean they're not puppies anymore, but we still call them. They're our babies right now, and I think family is so important to me and us, and also having other hobbies and, finding ways to unplug from teaching, to unplug from mediumship. Like before I hopped on the call with you, I was playing the piano for a little bit and watching like the 10 Commandments. And I was just like, okay, like I'm mindless. I'm just like zoning out today. or it's taking the dogs for a walk. Nothing. I always say nothing grounds you more and snaps you out of a pity party than like picking up dog poop on a walk. You're like, you cannot, you can't feel sorry. Like if you're having a bad day and you're like, oh, this didn't go well, or this didn't well, the dog's smacking the door and like, hey, I need to go for a walk, and you're going to pick up poop in about 10 minutes. It's just a really grounding way of unplugging from any of our types of work and stressors. So,
well, I'm so grateful that you took the time with us tonight. And as we're recording this, it's in the evening. So I'm so thrilled. I hope we can talk again soon. And thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
The Showgirl Tip of the Day podcast has original music composed by Joshua Holloway. Find him on YouTube, Joshua Holloway Music. This podcast is written by Michelle Bruckner and edited by Michelle Bruckner and Joshua Holloway. Find me on Instagram, Showgirl Tip of Day. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next week with a new episode.